Let's rewind to a year ago. I had just moved out of the city, hoping for peace and quiet after spending most of my adult life in a large, bustling metropolis. I'd always loved the energy of city life, the way it felt like the world was constantly moving, never waiting for anyone to catch up. There was a certain thrill to waking up to the sounds of street vendors, honking horns, and distant construction crews. It made you feel alive, part of something bigger than yourself. But as much as I loved it, that frenetic pace began wearing me down over time. The noise, the traffic, the endless hustle, it all took a toll. I reached a point where I craved something simpler. Space, greenery, maybe even a backyard garden to tend to. Most of all, I just wanted to wake up to the sound of birds instead of sirens. After months of searching online, I finally found what seemed like the perfect place, a cozy house in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes outside a smaller city. It checked all the boxes: well-kept homes, tidy lawns, a peaceful cul-de-sac where kids could play safely. The whole neighborhood looked like something out of a real estate commercial, right down to the matching mailboxes and neatly trimmed hedges. There was a comforting uniformity to it all, the kind of place where you felt like nothing bad could ever happen. The realtor mentioned the neighborhood had a Homeowners Association, HOA, which was presented as a selling point. Great community events, strict rules to keep property values high, she said with a smile. At the time, I thought it sounded perfect, a community that cared about appearances and worked together. In my mind, I pictured friendly neighbors hosting barbecues, weekend potlucks, and holiday celebrations where everyone brought a dish. I imagined kids playing tag in the street while parents chatted over coffee. It felt like exactly what I needed, a complete 180 from the chaos of city living. I was ready to trade in my cramped apartment for wide-open spaces and a slower, quieter life. Little did I know, appearances could be deceiving. What I thought would be a peaceful retreat would soon turn into one of the strangest experiences of my life. In my previous career, I worked as an insurance claims investigator. That probably sounds dull to most people, but it required serious attention to detail, sifting through endless documents, verifying statements, and noticing the smallest discrepancies that could indicate fraud. After more than a decade in that role, I developed an almost involuntary reflex for spotting things that didn't add up. It's like my brain is constantly scanning for inconsistencies, even when I'm off the clock. Combine that with my frugality, another trait people either find endearing or annoying, and you've got someone who's hyper-aware of how things should be. I hate wasting resources. I unplug appliances I'm not using, replaced all my light bulbs with LEDs, and basically live like I'm trying to sneak under some imaginary usage cap. Part of it is environmental concern. Energy consumption is a big deal, but a lot of it is just me being detail-oriented. So, when I moved into my new home and got my first electric bill, I naturally combed through it to make sure everything matched up with my usage. Little did I know, this seemingly harmless habit would be the first thread in unraveling a much bigger mystery. When I received my first utility bill, something felt off right away. It was higher than I expected, not astronomically so, but enough to raise a red flag. I've always been meticulous about tracking my energy usage, so I had a pretty good idea of what my bill should be. Sure, the move meant I was using more electricity than I had in my tiny apartment, but this increase felt excessive. Still, I tried to brush it off at first. Maybe I had underestimated how much energy it takes to run a larger space. New place, new routines. Adjustments were bound to happen. The following month, the bill went up again. This time, I couldn't ignore it. I started doing what I do best, investigating. I began logging my daily electricity usage, paying close attention to which appliances were running and when. I even purchased a smart meter that tracked energy consumption in real time and provided detailed reports. I wanted hard data to see if I was just imagining the problem. For a week, I stuck to a strict routine: minimal electronics, no unnecessary appliances, and careful monitoring of every single kilowatt hour. But when my next bill arrived, it was still too high. The numbers didn't make sense. According to my records, I was using less power than ever, but my bills told a different story. One evening, while reviewing my usage data, I noticed an odd pattern. There were significant energy spikes during certain hours of the day, usually late morning and early afternoon. The strange part? I wasn't even home during those times. On weekdays, I spent most of my time out running errands, attending appointments, or exploring the area. There was no logical reason for my electricity usage to increase when the house was empty. That's when I started to suspect something was seriously wrong. The next morning, I decided to inspect the exterior of my house. I walked around the perimeter, checking outlets, wiring, and anything else that could be causing the discrepancy. At first, everything looked normal. But then, as I reached the side yard, I saw something that made my stomach twist. There, snaking out from behind my house's exterior outlet, was a long orange extension cord. It stretched across the grass and disappeared under the fence that separated my yard from my neighbor's property. What in the world? Curiosity and irritation propelled me forward. I followed the cord to the fence line and peered over. My neighbor's yard was a sight to behold. An elaborate greenhouse took up nearly half the space. It was filled with lush greenery, exotic plants, and a complex network of grow lights and heating lamps. Even in broad daylight, the glow from the greenhouse was unmistakable. And right there, plugged into the end of the extension cord, was a multi-outlet power strip. Every light, fan, and heater in that greenhouse was powered by my electricity. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My neighbor, a man I barely knew and had exchanged only a few pleasantries with since moving in, was siphoning electricity from my house. It wasn't just a minor offense, either. The amount of energy required to run a fully operational greenhouse like his would explain the astronomical bills I'd been receiving. Anger surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. Confronting him impulsively wasn't the smartest move. I needed proof. That night, I installed a motion-activated camera near the side of my house, angled to capture the outlet and extension cord. It felt a bit invasive, but I needed to document exactly what was happening. Sure enough, the footage didn't take long to deliver. Just after sunrise, my neighbor emerged from his backyard, checked the connection on the extension cord, and casually returned to his greenhouse. There it was, clear evidence of his theft. I had all the proof I needed to take action. But what should that action be? My first instinct was to call the police and report the theft. Yet as the day wore on, doubts crept in. Escalating the situation could turn ugly fast, especially since we lived right next door to each other. Was I ready for a neighborhood feud? Plus, there was the possibility that he would deny everything and claim the footage didn't prove intent. I debated my options all day, wavering between reporting him and handling it myself. Finally, I decided on a different course, a direct confrontation. The next morning, I waited until I saw him working in his yard. Taking a deep breath, I marched over to the fence and called out to him. He looked up, a wide grin on his face, as if we were old friends. "Hey there! Settling in okay?" he asked cheerfully. His casual demeanor only fueled my frustration. I didn't mince words. "I know you've been stealing electricity from me," I said, holding up my phone with a still image from the camera footage. His grin vanished instantly. For a moment, he said nothing. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, probably trying to figure out how to talk his way out of it. "Look, it's not what it seems," he finally said, raising his hands as if to surrender. "I was going to tell you. Things got out of hand. I didn't think it would be a big deal." His excuses only made me angrier. "Not a big deal. My bills have doubled because of you." I snapped. "You've been stealing from me. What were you thinking?" My neighbor shifted uncomfortably under my glare, but I wasn't about to let him off the hook that easily. "I'm going to need an explanation," I said firmly. "And a real one this time." He sighed deeply, rubbing the back of his neck as if the weight of his guilt was finally catching up to him. "It's my wife," he began. "She's been sick for months. The greenhouse is for her. She's always loved plants, and when her health started declining, I wanted to give her a space to be surrounded by the things she loved. I lost my job right before I set it up, and I didn't know how to afford the energy it would take. I panicked. I thought I'd just use a little, just for a while." I was taken aback. The anger that had fueled me moments earlier began to waver. "Why didn't you just ask for help?" I asked. His shoulders slumped. "I didn't want to burden anyone," he admitted. "It was stupid. I know I should have talked to you." There was a long silence between us, filled only by the distant hum of traffic and the chirp of birds. "Look," I said slowly, "I'm not saying I'm okay with what you did. But I can see why you felt desperate." His eyes met mine, a mix of hope and regret swimming there. I'll pay you back. Every cent. And I'll disconnect it right now. You'll need to do more than that, I told him. We need to figure out how to get you the help you need, financially and for your wife's health. And if you ever have an issue like this again, you come to me first. No more stealing. Understood? He nodded vigorously. Understood. I'm sorry. True to his word, he disconnected the extension cord immediately, and over the next few weeks, we worked out a repayment plan. I also helped him connect with some local community resources to get financial and medical assistance for his wife. The whole situation had been a mess, but I felt we were on a path to making things right. One evening, about a month later, he stopped by my house unexpectedly. He held a small potted plant with bright, cheerful flowers. For you, he said. My wife wanted to say thank you for giving me a second chance. I accepted the plant with a small smile. Take care of her, and yourself, I said. That's all I ask. As he walked away, I realized that forgiveness wasn't just about letting go of anger. It was about building bridges where walls had once stood. And sometimes, those bridges led to unexpected friendships.